What time is it, you guys? It's Nerd Out time! How you guys doing today? Happy Wellness Nerd Out time, you guys. And today we are going to be talking about type 1 diabetes. We're going to go through the causes and the mechanisms, how everything kind of happens, and then tomorrow we'll talk about type 2. This whole week we'll be talking about diabetes. After that, we'll talk about lifestyle modifications, diet modifications. Take it easy, all right? And then we'll get into some supplements that we can take to help us deal with our diabetes. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll get to you at the end. As for now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of our discussion for the day. So when we talk about type 1 diabetes, well, we have a genetic component and we have environmental factors playing a major role here. And type 1 diabetes is actually an autoimmune disease. And this autoimmune disease comes in the form of an attack on our beta cells and the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas, which are responsible for insulin production. And we know that insulin carries glucose in the blood to other tissues to be used for energy. Also could take it back to the liver to be stored and to promote glycogenesis, or the production of glycogen if we have enough energy at the moment, right? And so when we talk about environmental factors, really what do we mean here? Well, really our environmental factor is a virus, and they're not sure exactly what this virus is to date. We can't put a label on it. But we do know that this virus binds to our MHC complexes, our major histocompatibility complexes, which are just, genes that code for proteins on the surface of our cells that help us recognize foreign substances, right? And so if this virus comes and it binds to the MHC complexes, well, we might incorrectly now recognize this antigen or foreign substance. Antigens could also be toxins in general, right? Foreign substances are toxins that our body will recognize and react to, right? And in this case, our body malfunctions big time because our cytotoxic T cells recognize this virus on the MHC complexes, specifically of our beta cells, right? We're really talking majorly here. And we'll get into what normally happens in a beta cell here in a minute. But we should know for now that this antigen, it sees our MHC complex, our cytotoxic T cells see these antigens expressed on our MHC complexes on the surfaces of our cells, and that triggers the release of cytokines from our cytotoxic T cells. And we know that cytokines are chemical messengers that act in the immune system to signal other things to happen in simple. Right, and in this cascade, well, these cytokines, they travel to plasma cells and they initiate the release of antibodies from these plasma cells. Now, these antibodies, they travel and they attack our beta cells in the islets of Langerhans, right, that produce insulin. And so we have a few types of antibodies, and we'll talk about them here in a second. But first, let's say, what is the genetic factor? Because we kind of get the gist of the environmental factor going on with this virus and this improper recognition of antigen presented on the cell surface, right, in the MHC complex. But our genetic factors are what are called susceptibility genes. And these susceptibility genes are HLA-DR3 and HLA-DR4, more specifically. And type 1 diabetes, albeit we see polymorphism in these HLA genes here, kind of promoting this autoimmune attack and dysfunction on the body, right? We see the presence of HLA polymorphism in other autoimmune diseases as well. And a few examples are vitiligo, right? Or vitiligo, we could say. Celiac disease is another one. Rheumatoid arthritis would be another. And systemic lupus erythematosus, or SLE, or just lupus as we know it, would be another one. So what normally happens in a beta cell, if everything's functioning properly, what kind of goes on if we don't have diabetes? Well, normally we'll have glucose influx into the cell through these glucose transporters, and glucose gets into the cell. And what happens when we have glucose, right? And especially if we need energy, right? We break it down. So through cellular respiration, through anaerobic metabolism, not requiring oxygen, also a little bit through aerobic metabolism, we break down this glucose and we get ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the major storage form of energy in the body, right? And so what ATP does then is it travels to potassium channels and it says, all right, we're going to close you up. It closes these potassium channels, and so we don't let potassium leave the cell. And when we don't let potassium leave, it builds up intracellularly, and this potassium building up inside the cell gives a more positive electric charge in the cell. And when we get this more positive charge, this triggers, because the body is always looking for homeostasis and balance and equilibrium, right? So when we get this more positive charge from so much potassium inside the cell, because we close those channels with the ATP binding to it from glucose breakdown, right? After glucose entered the cell, just to catch up on where we are here. All right, I know it's a lot today. But at this point, with a lot of potassium intracellularly and a positive charge, it triggers the opening of voltage-gated calcium channels. And now calcium influxes into the cell and tries to balance this charge, making it more negative, right? And when we get calcium influx, this calcium coming in, it triggers the release of insulin from the vesicles containing insulin intracellularly, all right? So that's one way that insulin would normally be released in a beta cell, okay? Another way is through the glutamic acid pathway, and we have glutamic acid being converted to GABA, and glutamic acid is converted to GABA via glutamic acid decarboxylase, all right? And when we get GABA, now GABA also promotes the release of insulin from our beta cells in the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas. And if you were curious about other cells in the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas, we have alpha cells, which are responsible for releasing glucagon, right? It kind of has the opposite function of insulin, right? But anyway, not to get too off topic here, right? So here we are. Now, what kind of antibodies do we have here? We said we have antibodies. Are they against beta cells in general? All right, we have anti-islet cell antibodies. Anti-islet antibodies, they call them, right? Is they're against the beta cells in the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas is how they get their name, all right? So we have those in general against our beta cells in the islets of Langerhans. We have anti-glutamic acid antibodies in themselves, and they attack the enzyme glutamic acid decarboxylase, and so we can't get glutamic acid conversion into GABA and hence release of insulin in this way. And then on top of that, to make matters worse, we have anti-insulin antibodies in themselves that attack insulin. So even if we had dodged everything and released insulin, it's getting attacked anyway. So it's a tough situation here, right, with type 1 diabetes, right? And that's a lot of what is going on. So what would normally happen, we should say, when insulin is traveling through the blood and it gets to another cell and or other tissues, and it promotes the uptake of this glucose, right? What kind of normally would be happening? Well, insulin would bind insulin cell surface receptors, and it would trigger an intracellular cascade that would open glucose transporters, and it would allow glucose to influx into the cell, right? And so and hence lowering blood sugar, getting it out of the blood and into the cells. But what happens if we don't have insulin? Well, nothing is binding those cell surface insulin receptors. Our glucose transporters, therefore, are not being opened via the intracellular cascade that is triggered by insulin binding to the receptors. And so we have that blood full of sugar. We have high blood glucose as it cannot enter the cells. And I know it was a lot today, but that's all we got for you. I hope you got something out of it. If you have any questions, again, I know it was a lot, please message me or leave a comment below if you found it useful. like or comment or, share the video, and let's get this stuff out there. Let's give the people knowledge that can help improve their lives for free. It's all about bettering yourself, being fully independent, and improving your own life here at When Wellness. That has been our message from day one, and we stand by it. So who do we got on here today? Let's say hi to the people. Who do we got? MV Dillon, how you doing, my friend? What's going on? House Cows, G Cruz, Melrose, what's up, girl? How you doing? Thanks for hopping on. Andrew and Franco, what's up? And Sikkim 401. Thank you guys very much. Have a fantastic rest of your night. That's all we got for you. As for today, we'll see you tomorrow, you guys. I'm not sure where, I'm not sure when, but we'll see you then. Have a great rest of your night, and happy When Wellness. Thank you.